Rockeyez would like to welcome Patrick Kearney. Hey man, Station, new CD just came out, 4.5 stars on our site Rockeyez, written by Mark Ballow, our writer. Congratulations, man.
Thank you so much, dude. And thanks for the excellent review. You know, Rockeyez, we really appreciate you guys giving us. I'm glad you guys like the album, you know?
Oh, definitely. Mark's a big fan and stuff like that. And most of these questions came from Mark, so I'm just reading them off as they, go on. He wants to know a little bit of background about yourself and where you're from and, how you got involved in music and what age.
So I guess, I've been singing for years, ever since I was a little kid. I was actually born in Syracuse, New York, and I was that little obnoxious kid that was always running around the house singing, Sesame Street tunes and stuff like that. And it's always been my passion ever since I was young. So, when I got older, I guess I started getting more involved through music in high school and middle school. Music classes. I was involved in choir and things, and I was in musicals and stuff like that. And that really kind of solidified a passion specifically for singing. And when I was in high school, I actually started taking voice lessons from the lead singer of the thrash metal outfit, Sacred Oath. And it was through that where I kind of realized that my favorite type of singing, above everything else, was rock singing. I loved listening to rock and roll. I loved singing metal. And I remember being younger and listening to, bands like Iron Maiden and Judas Priest, and just wondering, I want to do that. Like, I need to do that. And through a lot of technique and training, and I was able to sort of develop my own style, my own technique, and actually studied opera, like classical opera, for a few years as well. And that really helped, expand a lot of my own techniques. And it's cool because I feel like at the end of the day, I can do exactly what I intend to do with my voice. So, that's my singing history in a nutshell.
Pretty cool. Can you tell me about any of the early bands that you played in?
Yeah, so the first band I ever played in, I was actually not the singer of. I was the drummer. And it was this band in high school. It was me and 4 girls, believe it or not. And it was funny, but it kind of cracked me up because we really only had a couple of rehearsals. It wasn't anything super serious. But I remember I showed up at the first rehearsal, and it was 2 guitarists, a bass player, and a keyboard player, and then me on drums. And I showed up to the second rehearsal, and the 3 other girls had kicked out the keyboard player. So, and I think by the third rehearsal, the bass player brought her boyfriend over, and we didn't actually play any music. And that's when I was kind of like, all right, this isn't going anywhere. But after that, I was in a band in high school called Cold Fire, and it was a tribute. It was not a tribute band. It was a cover band, and that's kind of where we used to do Zeppelin, we used to do Jimi Hendrix, we used to do Guns N' Roses and stuff like that. And that's kind of where that was my first, lead singer appearance, I guess, where I kind of began owning my skills on stage as a front man, as opposed to before. I also played drums, and I was kind of used to playing, behind a kit and doing that. And then, and it was a lot of fun. And then when I graduated, and this is actually how I met Chris, I graduated high school. I started playing in another band called Suicide Jack, and it was like a thrash band. It was a metal band, very, very Judas Priest, meets Tool, kind of, with a little Norma Jean in it as well. Very metal. And I playing in that for a couple of years, I kind of got to the point where it was not really fulfilling what I wanted to do musically.
Right.
And so when I left, I started looking for some, for essentially Chris,
Right.
and he actually stumbled across one of the videos that of me singing in Suicide Jack, and I got, a phone call from him, and the rest is history.
Wow, that's pretty cool. So how did Station actually form, and when?
So Station formed, a few years ago, I guess, probably like, I lose track of time now. I feel like it's 4 years ago, 5 years ago, somewhere around there.
Uh-huh.
So, like I said, Chris had stumbled across one of my videos, and I had just left my band, and Chris actually had just left his band that he was playing in. And we met up for the first time because we were on the phone for a while. It was like, we always make jokes. It's just like people say that we're married because we talk and we hang out all the time. But honestly, it was that first phone call was a getting to know you first date phone call almost.
Right.
And we spent a long time on the phone because we were just talking about bands we loved and music that we loved. And he was on the phone, and I was like, oh yeah, let's get together, let's jam on a couple cover tunes. And he was like, oh yeah, do you like this band called Living Color? I don't know if you've heard of them. And I was like, I love Living Color. Let's do Cult of Personality. He's like,
right, yeah.
Okay, cool. I already know it. It's just there's no learning involved. And then I was like, well, are you into Iron Maiden? He's like, I love Iron Maiden. And let's play the Trooper. And so we ended up getting together, and we started writing music. We started playing some covers, and then April of 2011, we played our first show together. It was Chris and I, and we had hired a bunch of session guys to play the show with us, and in the audience that night was Mike, our bass player. And so after the show was over, we ended up chatting with Mike for a while, and we were like, well, we need a bass player. And he's like, well, I play the bass. So I always thought it was kind of funny. It's like Mike has actually been to every single Station show that's ever been played, even though he wasn't on stage for,
wow.
The first two. So, yeah, and then that's kind of everything else just fell into place from there. We all started getting together. We had, a couple of drummers, and here we are now. And it's a lot of push, a lot of trekking forward, and a lot of accomplishments, I think. So couldn't be happier with what Station has been able to do,
Right. You had the band recorded an EP back in 2013 with the help of veteran producer Michael Wagener. Tell me how your relationship with him is, and how'd that go about?
Michael was awesome. Michael was such a pleasure to work with. I think the EP came out really great. Recording in Nashville was just, it was unbelievable. And it was really cool because Michael's studio is fantastic.
Right.
It's really amazing. And the thing was, we went down there, and when we were getting ready to do our EP, we kind of decided, all right, it's time to go big or it's time to go home. We need to see if we can work with somebody, really big. And so we started looking through some of our favorite producers, and of course Michael's name came up. So we reached out to him, and literally within 15 minutes of reaching out to him, he responded saying, hey, love it, let's see if we can do something. And we were like, oh, awesome, let's do it, let's try to work together. So we went down to Nashville and recorded it, and like I said, Michael's studio is amazing, and it was just so great. Michael was great. He was incredibly smart guy, unbelievable producer, very calm and collected, and he got some really good takes out of us. So we were really happy to work with them.
Cool. Now, Station sound is clearly influenced by the '80s hard rock sound and stuff like that, and a lot of bands are missing that soulful sound these days. What bands influenced you guys?
A lot of different bands. It's actually interesting because if you talk to any different member of Station, they'll tell you something different. For example, I'm probably the heaviest, influenced by the heaviest music of all the guys. Like,
Right.
I was I still am a huge Iron Maiden fan, a huge Judas Priest fan. I like to listen to Queensryche. Jeff Tate is like one of my favorite singers of all time. There's, bands kind of like that. Like those were my go-to bands, and those are still a lot of the bands that I like to listen to nowadays. Where if you ask like Chris will tell you like his, some of his favorite songwriters, and a lot of it will be like Kip Winger or Don Henley or a lot more songwriter kind of bands and groups rather than rock groups per se. But it's cool because we're able to sort of take all of our influences and bring something really unique to Station, because we're all not, it's kind of good that we're all not, the same type of person. Like we can all bring a different sound. Like Mike actually brings a really industrial sound to his bass playing because he, like one of his favorite bands is Nine Inch Nails.
Right.
And I love Nine Inch Nails, they're great, but like I wouldn't say that I'm influenced by them. But it's cool because when Mike's in the studio or Mike's in rehearsal and we're banging out tunes, it brings something totally different that Chris or I wouldn't have thought of.
Right. Yeah.
So it's really cool.
Cool. Now, your full-length album just came out this year, as I mentioned earlier, with 15 songs and stuff like that. Are most of the songs a collaboration with band members, or who does the writing?
Well, a lot of the songs are written by Chris. Chris is definitely the primary songwriter of Station. A couple of the tunes he and I wrote together. But what's really interesting, and we've kind of come to the conclusion that what makes the album sound the way that it does and what makes Station sound the way that it does is what we all bring when we actually get into a room together and bang out the song. So Chris comes in the room, he has a song, he kind of shows us how it goes, and then I'll say, you know what, I'm going to do this here, and it makes the song better. And Mike will go, I'm going to do this. And then Chris will have a new idea, and he'll be like, actually, I'm going to do this instead. And it kind of shapes into something unique that's very collaborative. Even though the actual song wasn't written by all of us, it's kind of what we're able to do with it in a room is very Station. It's not dictated by the songwriters necessarily. Right. So
cool. Where was this album recorded, and who produced this one?
So this album was recorded on Long Island, and it was in Farmingdale. It was recorded at the Music Refinery with Anthony Lapardo and Ray Marte, and it was a kind of a collaborative production, more or less. Like Ray and Anthony were awesome. They were super pro to work with, but we got to be a lot more hands-on ourselves with this production. We had a lot of the ideas in our head, and you leave us to our own devices, and we get nuts. like we're such perfectionists in our own right.
Right.
So when we get in the room and all of a sudden we're kind of like in charge of ourselves, it's like, no, do that again. You can do it better. Oh, well, can you do that? It becomes like, 5 chefs trying to make soup. But in this case, I thought it worked out pretty well. So, I guess that's good.
Was there any interesting stories you could tell me about in the recording studio, or was everything cut and dry and ready to go?
A lot of stuff was cut and dry. Although I'll tell you what, there was a pretty funny story. So we didn't want to be completely gone from live performances while we were doing the recording, so we actually performed at the M3 party, the M3 pre-party, down in Sonoma's in Columbia, Maryland. And what was crazy is that we ended up staying that night a lot later than we had anticipated, and we didn't want to waste any of the studio time that we had booked. So as we were there, and we drove back, and we got in literally at 5 or 6 in the morning. 3 hours of sleep, and woke up went to the studio, and the first song that everyone decided to record was I Don't Want to Know Your Name. So I was like doing all the high screams at the end on like 4 hours of sleep, and more than once I almost passed out in the studio trying to hit some of those notes on such little sleep. In fact, I think Chris has a picture somewhere where it's just like after one of the takes I literally just like fell on the floor, and I was like, I'm dead, I can't do it.
Wow.
Yeah, we were all a little delirious that day.
I bet.
That was a nutty one.
Definitely. You have any personal favorites on the new disc, or any stories behind certain songs?
I have a couple of favorites. One is I would have to say one of my favorite songs on the album is Dressed to Kill.
Right.
I feel like it's one of our most driving songs, like, driving in terms of push. And I feel like that captures a lot of what we do live, and that was kind of the thing we wanted to do with the record. Was we kind of know how we sound live, and we wanted to capture a lot of that on tape, so to speak. And that song, I think, just came out exactly the way that we anticipated it to, in terms of like having that big driving live feel.
Right.
You put that song on, and then you go to a show and you're like, yes, I get it. And I guess on the lighter side, With Me Tonight is probably my favorite ballad. And that one's kind of interesting. I guess there's sort of an interesting story behind that. That actually took us the longest to record by far. There was a lot of, it's fun to experiment in the studio, and there were a lot of cool effects and, some gadgets that Chris was playing around with. But it actually took me 3 separate vocal tries to get it the way that I wanted it to sound, because it's such a empty song, like you're very exposed.
Right.
And I wanted to make sure that song came out as perfect as it could, and we kind of felt like there were a couple of misfires when we were starting to record it. So, but in the end, I think it's so cool that we were able to give it such a anthemic vibe. And so every time I listen to that song, I think of the song, but I also think of like everything that's behind it, and it just makes it so much more meaningful to me.
Cool. Is there any personal favorite songs when you perform live?
I think I have a couple. Probably One and Only.
Uh-huh.
One and Only is probably one of my favorite live songs. It's just, I love looking out into the audience during that song and hearing people scream out "wow, wow" back to me, and it's so cool to you see people and you have brand new fans and they're like all singing out at the same time. It's a very catchy song, and I think it pulls people in when we play it live. And so it's always just whatever, sometimes you have bad nights, sometimes you have good nights, but whenever we play that song, any bad night turns into a good night, because the crowd just like lifts up and it just feels really good. So it's probably one. And the second one would probably be More Than Enough, because that I just get to have fun vocally. Right. I kind of get to show off a little bit. I get to have a little fun and do some quirky things, and it opens the door for me to, it's kind of like, sometimes when you're a guitar player, you can like do little fills, you have your guitar solo, and you kind of just do what you want. I feel like I can kind of do what I want with More Than Enough, because it's like, you know what? It's that type of song.
Cool. You have 3 very well-made videos, with the band and stuff like that. Do you feel a video is necessary anymore?
Oh, absolutely. I just think that its use is portrayed in a different way. Back in the day, if you wanted to watch music videos, you had MTV. Even like, MTV obviously was the big one, but like you had promotional videos that had, like you could go into like stores and buy videos. Like you could actually, it was something very tangible to watch, and it was a market for it. But at the same time, now I think that it's less about having the the tangible product or like, you know, waiting for your favorite video to come on, and more about exposure, because YouTube is such a powerful tool, and with a good video and upload it to YouTube, you can reach a global audience very quickly and expose your video to the far regions of the world. And I think that it's still important, because if you make a bad video, either nobody's going to pay attention to it, or people are going to make fun of it, or, you know, it's not really going to help you. But if you make a good video, or you make a great video,
right,
it can only help you. Like, it really can only help you, and it gives you the exposure that you need to do, you know, anything you want to. If it means getting more interviews, if it means making more fans, if it means getting more features on different websites, it's very important to have a video. Very important to have a very well-made video.
Right. Definitely. Now, you played Rocklahoma. Like you said, you played M3, Rock and Skull. You play all up and down the East Coast and stuff like that. How do you guys manage to do that, being an independent band?
Well, you know, it's interesting. We're very disciplined bunch of guys. Like, we all kind of know what our purpose serves in the band. We all have our different things that we're good at that we're able to bring to the table. We're self-managed right now, and, you know, we own everything, which is actually really good. It really allows us to do kind of whatever we want to, because we own our masters, we own our own publishing, we manage ourselves, you know, we book ourselves, so we can kind of make the deals that we want to make. We can explore every option that we want to explore without having really to answer to anybody. And, I mean, ultimately, we would love to have a relationship with a management company or a label, but for right now, we're able to kind of do exactly what we need to do on our own.
Right.
So, as far as, like, booking shows, it started off really slow, and then slowly we began to build relationships with other bands, other venues, other promoters, and it got to a point where we were like, okay, cool, like, we can actually start playing outside of the tri-state area. And then we went to Delaware, and then we started going to Virginia, and then we went out to Rocklahoma, and then we went out to Chicago, you know, so...
Right.
Slowly but surely, we started being able to, like, manage these different relationships and get out further and further and further. So, and what's really cool is we're going to be heading out west for not the first time, but, like, we're going to be heading out to a bunch of different places in the Midwest that we haven't been to before. So it's even building upon those new relationships that we're making, and hopefully, not too distant future, we'll be able to do some countrywide tours.
Cool. Now, you just mentioned you're going out west. Is there any other shows coming up that you'd like to talk about?
Yeah, we have a bunch of shows we'd like to talk about. So on October 7th, we're going to be back in New York City. We're going to be playing at Arlene's Grocery. It's one of our favorite venues in New York City. We're going to be in Delaware at J.B. McGinn's, and then the Brighton Bar in New Jersey on October 2nd and 3rd. And then after that, we are playing the Rock and Skull Festival on October 15th, and that's in Pekin, Illinois. And we're currently building some shows around that date. So if you check out our website, stationband.com, you check out our Facebook page, facebook.com/stationnyc, we're going to be announcing every new show that comes up along that route. So, you know, that'll be where we're announcing everything.
Cool. Now, I know the CD just came out a few months back and stuff like that. Is there any thoughts or plans on the next record already?
Actually, yeah. Chris and I have been talking about it. What's interesting is that, so, you know, 15 songs on a record is obviously, it's quite a long record. But what's interesting is that, you know, since Chris and I have been together, we have, like, 40 or 50 original songs that we have written throughout the years, and 15 was just the first chopping block of a lot of that material. So for record 2, we're already talking about some of the songs that didn't make the cut from record 1. We have some new music that we're starting to work on and perfect and hopefully take on the road with us this fall. And I mean, in fact, actually, I kid you not, Chris and I were having a talk earlier today about the production of record 2 and what we kind of wanted to do from that standpoint. So record 2 is very much in the works right now, at least in its, primordial form, I guess. Right. Because, we're probably not going to actually hit the studio for a while, but we're getting our ducks in a row to try to make record 2 happen sooner rather than later. Yeah.
Cool,
Stay tuned for more Station.
Cool. Well, congratulations on the new disc, and Mark and all the fans love it so far, and hopefully you gain new fans by our interview and stuff like that. Did I miss anything you want to talk about?
No, not really. Just that, check out our media, stationband.com, facebook.com/stationnyc, give us a like, and be sure to check out some upcoming shows, especially to our Midwest fans, Midwest fans that are listening, because hopefully we'll be hitting some of your towns, because we have some cool stuff in the works that's just now getting confirmed, so stay tuned. We're gonna be trying to play as much as possible over the fall and all of next year. So hopefully we'll see you there.
Cool. Patrick, thanks a lot for the talk. And would you like to say anything to the fans out there?
Rock on, and thank you guys so much for listening to Station.
Thanks a lot, man. I appreciate it.
Thank you, man.
Bye-bye.
Take care.